I still remember that morning. The sound of the wheat whispering in the breeze. The soft rustle that only comes when the heads are heavy and ready for harvest. The air smelled warm, dusty and sweet. Like victory after a long year of fighting everything from drought to paperwork. My field stretched golden as far as the eye could see, a sea of sunlit grain. I was proud of it. Too proud, maybe, because pride, in this neighborhood, is an open invitation for trouble, especially from the HOA. "Mr. Collins," said a sharp voice behind me. I turned to see her. Brenda, HOA president, part-time menace, full-time Karen, sunglasses like armor, clipboard like a sword. "We've received multiple complaints about your agricultural display." I frowned. "You mean my farm?" She sniffed, glancing over my fence like the wheat was personally offending her. "Your farm violates the Community Landscaping Code. Section 14B, to be exact. It's a fire hazard, and frankly, it's unsightly." Unsightly. That word hit harder than it should have. I'd spent 2 years converting that abandoned lot into something alive again. I started explaining zoning, exemptions, county permits. But she cut me off with that smug HOA smile. "Either you mow it down by Friday, or the HOA will handle it." I laughed. "Handle it? What? Are you going to bring a lawnmower big enough for 5 acres? She didn't laugh. She just adjusted her sunglasses and said, "Don't test us," before walking away. That should have been the end of it. A threat, an argument, and a few angry emails. But Brenda didn't bluff. The HOA never bluffed. They'd already called the county once about my old tractor being an dumb eyesore. Now, apparently, the wheat itself was the enemy. As I watched her disappear down the road, clipboard swaying with purpose, a strange chill crept up my spine, the kind that whispers something's coming. I didn't know then that something would come with smoke, flames, and the sound of everything I'd built turning to ash. It started with a letter, or rather, a warning. Bright orange paper, folded neatly in my mailbox like it was waiting to ruin my day. The HOA logo was stamped at the top, all bold and self-important. Final notice of non-compliance. Immediate action required. I read it twice, then laughed out loud. Immediate action. As if my wheat would suddenly sprout legs and start a riot. The letter demanded that I remove all unapproved agricultural growth within 72 hours or face corrective enforcement. I called Brenda. Of course I did. "Brenda," I said, trying for calm. "The county zoning board already cleared my use of the land. You can't just—" "Oh, I can," she interrupted, her tone sweet but serrated. "The HOA board voted last night. Your wheat violates aesthetic uniformity. This isn't rural farmland, Mr. Collins. This is Silver Oaks Estates." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Silver Oaks Estates used to be farmland, Brenda. Mine, actually." There was silence on the line, then a huff. "That doesn't make you exempt from the rules. Cut it, or we'll arrange removal ourselves." I hung up. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything but that letter. It sat on the counter like a ticking bomb, bright enough to burn through my thoughts. I didn't believe they'd actually do anything. Not really. 3 days later, I was proven wrong. I came home from town to find 2 men in reflective vests standing by my fence line, one holding a weed burner. A white HOA pickup truck idled on the shoulder, and Brenda stood nearby, clipboard in hand like a general on the battlefield. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted. Brenda turned. "Calm as you please." "Corrective enforcement," she said. "You were warned. You can't just burn my crop. It's dry, it's a hazard. And it's on HOA-managed property borders," she said flatly. "We're taking care of it before it spreads." I could smell the faint hint of propane. One of the workers clicked the igniter. "Don't—" I started, but the spark had already caught. A small flame licked at the wheat, a hiss, then a roar as the wind shifted. And in less than 30 seconds, my field was on fire. The sound hit first, a rushing, cracking roar that didn't sound real. The fire leapt like it had been waiting for this moment. a living thing tearing through gold and sun and months of work in seconds. "Get it out! Get it out!" I yelled, sprinting toward the line. But the heat stopped me cold. A wall of air so hot it felt like opening an oven door the size of the sky. The two workers stumbled back, swatting at their sleeves. One shouted, "We can't stop it! It's jumping the line!" Brenda stood frozen, clipboard limp at her side, mouth slightly open. Her sunglasses reflected the inferno, bright orange hell mirrored in black glass. "Call 911!" I screamed. She fumbled for her phone. I didn't wait. I ran for my tractor, thinking maybe I could dig a trench. Cut the fire off before it reached the dry ridge. But by the time I turned the key, it was already too late. The wind had changed, whipping the flames east toward the neighborhood. My neighborhood. Sirens wailed in the distance, the sound wobbling with heat. I could feel the smoke clawing into my lungs, thick and bitter, burning my throat. I grabbed my hose, turned it on full, and aimed at the ground to carve a wet strip. Desperate. Pointless. Brenda shouted something, but her words were lost in the noise. The men were gone, fled down the street, and then, just as the first fire truck screamed around the bend, the flames hit the HOA's pristine white vinyl fence. It melted instantly, curling and blackening like paper. "Get everyone out!" I shouted, waving at the firefighters. One of them pointed toward the houses, flames already crawling up the dry, decorative shrubs that Brenda had insisted everyone plant. Within minutes, the line of perfect homes, trimmed hedges, spotless siding, were glowing orange under a curtain of smoke. I stood there, helpless, watching everything I'd worked for, and everything they'd built to look perfect, crumble under the same fire they'd started. Somewhere behind me, Brenda screamed, "My house! Oh my God, my house!" The sound cracked something inside me. Not triumph, not pity, just the awful realization that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By the time the sun went down, everything was black and gray. The fire crews had been at it for hours, hoses snaking across the street, flashing red lights painting the smoke like some twisted sunset. My wheat field was gone, just smoldering dirt and twisted metal where my irrigation lines used to be. Half the HOA board's houses were damaged. 2 were completely gone. Brenda's among them. I stood on the edge of my property, ash crunching under my boots, watching the firefighters pack up. One of them glanced my way. A young guy, exhausted, covered in soot. "You the owner?" he asked. "Was," I said. "Not sure what I am now." He nodded slowly. "Fire started right at your fence line. Looks like open flame ignition. Who lit it?" I looked over his shoulder. Brenda was there, wrapped in a blanket the Red Cross had given her. Mascara streaked down her cheeks like black rivers. She saw me and immediately straightened. "He did," she yelled, voice raw but still somehow sharp. "He started it. He's been threatening the HOA for months." The firefighter's eyes flicked between us. "That true?" I let out a breath that felt like it came from somewhere deep in my bones. "She's lying. They were burning my crop without permission." "That's ridiculous," Brenda snapped. "We were performing a safety procedure." "Safety?" I stepped forward, heat flaring in my chest. "You lit a wheat field on fire during a drought." Her jaw clenched, eyes darting to the fire chief. "He's twisting it. He wanted this. He hated us." A police cruiser rolled up. 2 officers stepped out, notebooks ready. One started taking statements from the crowd gathering near the mailboxes, neighbors whispering, pointing, trying not to stare too obviously. It was surreal. The same people who'd smiled at me every morning, waved from their driveways, now looked at me like I was a monster. I wanted to scream the truth, but all I could do was stand there, breathing smoke, as Brenda's voice carried through the night, louder, shriller, desperate. "Arrest him! He burned down our homes." The officer turned toward me. "Sir, we're going to need your statement." And that's when I realized this fire wasn't just consuming fields or houses anymore. It was about to swallow me. The next few days felt like a slow-motion nightmare, the kind where you're running, but the air's thick and heavy, And no matter how hard you move, the world just drags you down. Fire investigators came first. They taped off the field, dug through the ashes, and asked the same questions over and over. Where were you standing? Did you give permission for any burns? Who was present? I told them everything. Names, times, even the HOA notice I'd saved, now smudged with soot. They nodded, took photos, and left without much reaction. Just professional silence that felt more like judgment than help. Meanwhile, Brenda had turned the neighborhood into a courtroom. Every time I stepped outside, I caught pieces of her voice. He did it for insurance. He hated the HOA. I told him that field was a hazard. People who used to wave now avoided eye contact. Kids stared from behind car windows. I couldn't even buy coffee in town without hearing whispers. Then came the meeting. Emergency HOA assembly, held in the one structure still standing, the community hall. I wasn't invited, but of course I went anyway. When I walked in, the room went quiet. About 20 neighbors sat in folding chairs, faces pale under the fluorescent lights. Brenda stood at the front, hair tied back, her tone solemn and righteous. We've suffered a tragedy, she began, and we must hold accountable those responsible for putting this community in danger. I crossed my arms. You mean you? Her eyes cut to me, cold and sharp. No, Mr. Collins, you ignored repeated safety warnings. You refused to comply. This is the consequence of negligence, I laughed, bitter and dry. Negligence? You brought a propane torch into a field of dry grain. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others just stared. Brenda pressed on. The HOA's legal counsel has advised that we pursue damages. Civil suit. Property loss, emotional distress, public endangerment. A few gasps. Someone whispered, "That's over $500,000. I took a step closer to her podium. You burned down my land and now you're suing me? Her smile was faint, almost satisfied. Actions have consequences, Mr. Collins, even yours. And just like that, I knew. They weren't just trying to ruin my field. They were trying to bury me. When you're fighting the HOA, logic doesn't matter. Proof does. And thankfully, I had plenty of it. That night, sitting at my kitchen table with a half-empty mug of burnt coffee, I started digging through my old emails. Every message Brenda had ever sent. Every notice, every smug PDF titled, Compliance Reminder. I knew somewhere in there was the rope they'd hang themselves with, and I found it buried in a thread from 2 weeks before the fire. Per HOA fire mitigation policy, the board reserves the right to initiate controlled burns on unmaintained lots. The problem? That policy had been rejected by the county fire marshal the year prior. I still had the rejection letter. I felt my pulse kick. There it was. Their authority to burn anything was void. Legally, publicly, officially. I screenshotted everything. Emails, attachments, even the photo. I'd taken that day, Brenda standing next to the propane burner, clipboard in hand. I zoomed in on her reflection in the workers' safety glasses. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. The next morning, I sent it all to the county investigator. By noon, he called. Mr. Collins, we've reviewed your materials. We'll be following up with the HOA board for statements. His tone was clipped, professional, but I heard it. That little edge of validation. By evening, the neighborhood grapevine was buzzing again, but this time the whispers sounded different, curious, doubtful. People had seen the fire reports, the videos from passing drivers. One clip even showed the HOA truck parked by my fence, time-stamped an hour before the fire call. The narrative was shifting and Brenda could feel it. Around sunset, I heard a knock at my door. When I opened it, she was standing there, no clipboard, no sunglasses, just a woman whose whole world had started to crack. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "We all lost something." I leaned against the door frame, exhaustion heavy in my chest. "Yeah, but only one of us started it." Her jaw trembled, just once. "You think this is justice? You'll burn with us, Collins, one way or another." And then she turned and walked off into the smoke-colored dusk, leaving me with the uneasy feeling that this wasn't over. Not yet. The The courthouse smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. Not exactly the setting for revenge, but it would do. It had been 3 months since the fire. The land was bare now, the HOA still half in ruins, but the case had finally made its way to civil court. On one side, me; on the other, Brenda and the Silver Oaks HOA, armed with lawyers, statements, and righteous indignation. I didn't have a lawyer I could really afford, but I had something better. The truth, neatly printed in binders and sealed in clear plastic sleeves. When the judge called the case, Brenda strutted up in a beige suit that was one shade away from her old fence, polished, poised, pretending she hadn't torched 5 acres of my life. Her attorney started strong. Your Honor, the defendant's reckless maintenance of an unpermitted agricultural hazard. I could almost see Brenda's smirk in the reflection of the courtroom window. Then my turn came. I stood up, my voice steadier than I felt. Your Honor, Exhibit A. I handed over a printed email. The HOA's rejected fire mitigation policy. They had no authority to perform controlled burns. Exhibit B, time-stamped footage showing their contractor lighting the fire. Exhibit C, county rejection letter dated last year. The room went quiet. Brenda's lawyer froze mid-page. The judge adjusted her glasses, scanned the documents, then slowly looked up. Mrs. Dalton, she said, Brenda's full name rolling through the silence like thunder. Were you aware that this policy had been invalidated? Brenda's lips parted. We thought, our counsel said. The judge cut her off. So you authorized an illegal controlled burn during a drought? I didn't smile. I didn't have to. The silence did the work for me. When the gavel finally came down, the decision was swift and surgical. HOA liable for damages, full restitution for property loss, and a personal fine for reckless endangerment. Outside, reporters waited. The story had spread fast. HOA burn scandal. Controlled burn gone wrong. Farm versus fences. Brenda stormed past them, eyes down, her world shrinking with every flash of a camera. I walked the other way, into the sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in months. The fight was over, or so I thought. Because a few weeks later, nature decided to add its own verdict. Summer came back crueler than before. Drier, hotter, and angrier. The county issued burn bans so strict that even backyard barbecues were illegal. The land still carried the memory of smoke. Every breath felt like a reminder. I'd started rebuilding, cleared the charred debris, tilled the soil, even saw tiny green shoots pushing through the black crust. The stubborn kind of life that refuses to die. Then came the storm. Not rain, wind. Hot, bone-dry wind that roared down from the hills, snapping branches, tossing dust into swirling ghosts. By noon, the sky turned a strange color. Orange-gray, heavy with ash that wasn't from me this time. I climbed the ridge behind my property, and my stomach dropped. Far beyond the development, a wildfire was racing toward us, feeding on dry brush and years of bad luck. The horizon burned, an endless wall of flame rolling downhill. I called the fire line, packed what I could, and left. As I drove away, I saw my rebuilt fences, my sprouting wheat, all trembling under that red sky. And then I saw the HOA, Silver Oaks Estates, rebuilt just enough to look whole again. New fences, fresh paint, rows of ornamental shrubs, the same kind that burned like paper last time. By nightfall, the firestorm hit. A gust caught the treetops, embers swirling like angry fireflies. Within minutes, the neighborhood was glowing again. Eerily familiar. Brenda's old house, rebuilt on the same foundation, was the first to go. I stood at the fire line, a mile away, watching it all from the safety zone. Firefighters rushed past me, but it was clear. The storm was too big, too fast. The flames didn't discriminate between the guilty or the grieving. One of the firefighters beside me muttered, "It's like the land's taking back what's hers." I didn't answer. I just watched the inferno swallow the HOA. Fences curling, roofs caving, all of it turning to the same ash that had once covered my field. When it was over, The wind died, and silence took its place. The moon rose pale over a wasteland of smoke. The county later called it a natural disaster. But to me, it felt more like balance. Brutal, final balance. My land, scorched twice, would heal again. Theirs? Maybe not. Sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or laws. Sometimes it comes in the shape of a storm. And this time, it didn't need my help to burn.